A paraglider in Texas filmed something 20 to 30 feet away that he was never supposed to see. An object with no wings, no rotor, and no engine hovering in open air. It didn't move like a drone. It didn't look like a balloon. And when analysts went through the footage frame by frame, they found that parts of the object didn't appear to be entirely solid. That footage is now viral. And it's far from the only one. From classified military sensors to civilian cameras, the objects are getting closer. The footage is getting clearer. And the people who might have answers aren't talking. The Garden Ridge encounter. High above the rolling landscape near Garden Ridge, Texas, a paraglider was recording a routine flight. Vast stretches of land, distant waterways, soft cloud layers. It was supposed to be peaceful footage of the scenery below. Then something appeared ahead of him, suspended in the open air. The object didn't look like any known aircraft. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a helicopter. It wasn't a drone. What the camera captured was a compact, segmented structure that looked both mechanical and organic at the same time. Analysts who later studied the footage described it as elongated and cocoon-like, with a layered exterior that gave the impression its outer shell could shift or unfold. Some compared it to a metamorphic or transformer-type configuration, referencing its ridged, almost armored appearance. But shape wasn't the strangest part. In certain frames, light appeared to bend or diffuse around the object's edges. Portions of its surface looked semi-transparent, as though the object wasn't entirely solid, or was in a constant state of subtle movement. This visual distortion led some analysts to suggest the object may have been capable of changing shape mid-air, a trait that shows up repeatedly in a specific category of UFO research focused on morphing or transformer-type phenomena. What made this sighting even more significant was how close it was. Based on scale comparisons between the paraglider's equipment and the object, several independent reviewers estimated the distance at roughly 20 to 30 feet. For context, researchers classify anything within approximately 500 feet as a close encounter. This one was well inside that threshold. Most UFO sightings happen at a distance. Blurry lights on the horizon, a dot on a radar screen. This was face-to-face, and the paraglider was at altitude, floating in the same airspace as the object, not watching from the ground through miles of atmosphere. That elevated perspective may actually explain something important. Many researchers believe unidentified aerial phenomena could be far more common in upper airspace than anyone realizes, existing just beyond the altitude where most people ever look. Pilots, paragliders, and high-altitude hobbyists occasionally report sightings that never reach the public. The Garden Ridge video brought one of those encounters into full view. Then the encounter shifted. As the paraglider drifted closer, the object didn't retreat. It held its position with absolute stillness, despite the wind currents pushing everything else around it. It didn't drift. It didn't wobble. Some who reviewed the footage believe the object wasn't just holding position. It was tracking the paraglider. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the object moved. Not gradually. It simply wasn't there anymore. One frame it's hovering, the next the sky is empty. No acceleration, no trail, just gone. The footage went viral within days. Frame-by-frame enhancements and motion analyses are still ongoing. Each review seems to reinforce the same conclusion. This object, with its segmented exterior, cocoon silhouette, and apparent morphing qualities, doesn't fit into any conventional aerospace category. Researchers specializing in metamorphic aerial phenomena have pointed to historical accounts describing objects that alter their structure mid-flight. Those reports often include cocoon-shaped entities that unfold, rotate, or reconfigure while airborne. The Garden Ridge footage appears to echo those descriptions, lending visual evidence to theories that have long lacked clear imagery. A pattern in Texas and the Garden Ridge sighting didn't happen in a vacuum. Texas has been producing encounters like this for over 70 years. November 2nd, 1957, just after 10:50 p.m. Two farm workers, Pedro Saucedo and Joe Salaz, are driving a truck down a dark highway outside Levelland, Texas. A bright blue-green flash fills the windshield. The engine dies. The headlights go dark. Something passes overhead, close enough that they feel heat and wind from it. Then it's gone. The engine restarts on its own. They call the police. The operator doesn't take it seriously. Then the next call comes in. Then the next. Over the following 2 hours, 15 separate drivers across multiple roads around Levelland report the exact same thing. A glowing object hovering over the road, their vehicle shutting down completely, and everything restarting once the object moves on. Among them, a married couple, a college student, the town's own sheriff, and its fire chief. All independent, all describing the same phenomenon. The Air Force sent investigators through Project Blue Book. Their conclusion: ball lightning. Their own scientific consultant, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, publicly called that explanation inadequate. Ball lightning doesn't shut down car engines across a 10-mile radius in a coordinated pattern. 6 years before Levelland, in August 1951, something else happened over Lubbock. 5 professors from Texas Tech were sitting in a backyard one evening when a silent V-shaped formation of bluish-green lights swept overhead. They were experts in geology, physics, and engineering. They knew what airplanes looked like. This wasn't one. The formations returned on subsequent nights. Dozens of witnesses saw them. A 19-year-old freshman named Carl Hart Jr. photographed them, producing one of the earliest widely circulated UFO images. Project Blue Book investigated. They never reached a conclusion, and it hasn't stopped. In March 2026, residents of Red Oak, south of Dallas, watched a fiery object slow down, stop, change direction, and continue on a new path. Meteors don't do that. No explanation was given. A year earlier, a U.S. Air Force pilot at 20,000 feet reported a dark object passing beneath his wing with no visible propulsion. It vanished, then reappeared miles away in seconds. Civilians have been reporting these things in Texas for decades, but civilians don't carry FLIR pods and infrared cameras. The U.S. military does. And when their sensors started picking up the same kind of objects in combat zones halfway around the world, the footage they captured was harder to dismiss and even harder to explain. The Mosul Orb. In April 2016, a U.S. military surveillance aircraft was flying a reconnaissance mission over Mosul, Iraq. The city was an active conflict zone, and the airspace was tightly controlled. Every aircraft, drone, and projectile in the area was tracked and accounted for. Then something appeared on camera that wasn't on any list. The footage, only a few seconds long, shows a smooth metallic sphere gliding across the sky. Its surface reflects sunlight as it moves at a constant altitude and speed. No wings, no exhaust trail, no rotors, no heat distortion. Nothing that would explain how it was flying. The video was classified for years, circulating only within intelligence briefings. It wasn't until 2023 that investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell and reporter George Knapp revealed the clip. Corbell described it as the first military-filmed image of a UAP released from an active conflict zone. What makes the Mosul orb stand out isn't just its appearance, it's the context. This wasn't a civilian phone video of a light in the sky. It was captured by military-grade sensors in a war zone where every square mile of airspace is monitored. The U.S. Department of Defense has acknowledged the footage but has not identified the object's origin, capability, or purpose. Similar metallic orb sightings have reportedly been observed in other regions and conflict zones, suggesting this isn't a one-off anomaly, but a recurring phenomenon that military systems keep picking up. The Afghanistan disk. 4 years later, in November 2020, another U.S. military aircraft recorded something over the mountains along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. The footage, captured on a forward-looking infrared system, shows a large disc-shaped object moving through dense cloud cover. At first, its motion is smooth, almost drifting. Then, without warning, it makes a sharp directional change, cutting across the sky in a way that doesn't match any known aircraft. Behavior. The FLIR system is designed to detect heat signatures from engines, exhaust, and friction. The disk produced none. No heat plume, no propulsion signature, no aerodynamic features. Analysts estimated the object was between 200 and 400 meters wide. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the length of 3 to 6 football fields. As it moved through the clouds, it maintained stability while executing movements that looked intentional rather than random. This wasn't something tumbling through the sky. It was being controlled, and whatever was controlling it showed no interest in evading the military aircraft that was tracking it. Like the Mosul footage, this video was classified until Corbell and Knapp released it after years of verification with government sources. Knapp stated plainly that the footage was real, and that it was never supposed to be made public, but should have been. The Iraq jellyfish. Then there's the case that may be the strangest of all. In Satwidir, October 2018, at a U.S. Joint Operations base in Iraq, military surveillance cameras captured an object that didn't look like anything in any aviation database. It appeared only through the base's forward-looking infrared system. A small, rounded object with dangling appendage-like shapes beneath it, giving it the appearance of a jellyfish floating through the air. It moved steadily across the base on a controlled path. No wings, no exhaust, no signs of lift. Nothing that explained how it was airborne. But the thermal signature was what really made analysts pause. The object kept shifting between near-invisible and solid black on the infrared feed, meaning its temperature was changing rapidly, jumping fast enough that the tracking system struggled to keep up. Dr. Matthew Sidagis, a physics professor at the University at Albany, later said the object was changing temperature faster than any known object. Then it did something that moved this case into a category of its own. The object descended into a nearby body of water. It stayed submerged for approximately 17 minutes. Then it re-emerged and accelerated away at high speed. An object that flies without propulsion, shifts temperature at impossible rates, enters water, stays submerged for nearly 20 minutes, and then takes off again. In military and scientific terminology, this is called transmedium capability, the ability to operate seamlessly across air, water, and potentially space. It's a characteristic that has shown up in multiple UAP cases, including reports from the USS Nimitz encounter in 2004, where Navy personnel described an object transitioning from air to sea without any apparent change in performance. The Pentagon reviewed the Iraq jellyfish footage, and officially labeled it a UAP. No further explanation has been offered. The Mexico Mothership. Not every encounter comes from military censors, but sometimes civilian footage is so well documented that it becomes nearly as difficult to dismiss. On May 22, 2009, a magnitude 5.7 earthquake struck Mexico City. 5 hours later, while cameras were still rolling across the city capturing aftermath footage, something appeared in the sky that had nothing to do with the tremor. Multiple witnesses, filming independently from different neighborhoods across Mexico City, captured footage of a dark, irregularly shaped object hovering high above the skyline, partially obscured by clouds. At first it appeared stationary. Then it did something that no one expected. Smaller objects, bright, luminous spheres, began emerging from the larger mass. One after another, they poured out in clusters, separating and drifting away in different directions, as though being deployed with intent. The sequence repeated itself multiple times over several minutes. The larger object appeared to be functioning as a carrier, releasing smaller craft in waves. What elevated this case above a typical sighting was the multi-angle documentation. This wasn't one person with a shaky phone. At least 3 separate videos, shot from different locations across the city, captured the same object performing the same behavior at the same time. Analysts who cross-referenced the footage confirmed the angles were consistent with a single large object above the skyline. The timing raised its own questions. The appearance came hours after a major earthquake, and some researchers have noted a recurring pattern in UFO reports coinciding with seismic events. 5 years earlier, in 2004, Mexican Air Force pilots had their own unexplained encounter when their infrared cameras detected 11 unidentified objects moving in formation over the state of Campeche. The pilots tried to pursue. They couldn't close the distance. That footage was officially released by the Mexican military. No government or scientific authority has explained the 2009 footage, but the combination of multiple independent recordings, structured behavior from the object, and Mexico's own military encounters with UAPs makes this one of the harder civilian cases to dismiss. The Petrozavodsk event. And then there are cases that go beyond anything a camera can fully capture. On the morning of September 20th, 1977, residents of Petrozavodsk in the Soviet Union woke to something that would become one of the most documented aerial phenomena of the Cold War era. A glowing object appeared on the horizon. Factory workers, fishermen, and families all noticed the same radiant light descending in a spiraling motion. Most assumed it was a meteorite. Then it stopped. Instead of continuing its trajectory, the object decelerated to a near standstill and hovered directly above the city, radiating an intense glow that shifted between reddish-orange and brilliant white. Then it transformed. The sphere expanded outward and reshaped itself into a massive jellyfish-like structure. A luminous dome sat on top, and beneath it, countless beams of light cascaded downward, like tentacles reaching toward the ground. Soviet newspaper Pravda described it as a radiant downpour. Thousands of slender rays of light fell silently across the city, illuminating streets, rooftops, and windows. Panic spread quickly. During the Cold War, any unexplained aerial phenomenon carried the immediate shadow of a nuclear strike. Some residents fled indoors. Others dropped to the ground. Then, thin, arrow-shaped rays began descending rapidly, and witnesses later reported finding small cavities and indentations on surfaces where the beams had made contact. Some residents described feeling a tingling sensation during the event. Others reported physical discomfort for hours afterward. One of the most extraordinary moments came when a smaller spherical object, separated from the main structure, moved independently over the rooftops as though conducting a survey, and then returned to the larger craft through an opening on its underside. Eventually, the object transformed into an elliptical ring and drifted toward cloud formations near Lake Onega. As it entered the clouds, witnesses reported a reddish void in the sky, as though the atmosphere had been scorched. Meteorological Station Director Yuri Gromov dismissed all natural explanations. No aircraft had been recorded in the airspace. Ball lightning couldn't account for the scale, duration, or physical traces left behind. News agencies received over 1,500 letters from concerned citizens asking about potential radiation exposure and long-term safety. Then government authorities shut down all further reporting on the event. Behind closed doors, scientists were reportedly tasked with conducting covert investigations, but their findings were never made public. To this day, the Petrozavodsk incident remains officially unexplained. Why the footage keeps getting clearer? There's a pattern forming across all of these cases. The footage is getting better, the objects are getting closer, and the sources are getting harder to dismiss. 10 years ago, most UFO evidence was a blurry dot on a phone camera. Today, we have infrared footage from military drones, FLIR captures from surveillance aircraft in active war zones, and close-range video from a paraglider floating 20 feet from an unknown object in Texas. The technology is catching up to the phenomenon. Military sensors designed to track missiles and enemy aircraft are now recording objects that don't match anything in their databases. Civilian cameras with increasingly powerful zoom capabilities are picking up things that human eyes miss in real time, like the factory workers in Wisconsin who didn't notice the disc-shaped object until they replayed their footage. And yet, for all the improvements in what we can capture, the explanations haven't kept pace. The Pentagon acknowledges these objects exist. It labels them UAPs. It admits their origin, capability, and intent remain unknown. But it stops there. The objects keep showing up. The cameras keep getting better. And the silence from the people who might actually have answers only gets louder. What do you think is really going on? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.